We consider ourselves liberated from the absolute monarchs of the past. Yet modern society catalogs, schedules, and regulates human behavior with a level of precision that a medieval king could never have achieved. This control is not maintained through physical chains. It is maintained through the architecture of visibility. To understand how this works, we have to look at an 18th century prison design by Jeremy Bentham called the Panopticon. The Panopticon is an architectural concept where a single watchman can observe all inmates without them knowing whether they are being watched. This diagram shows Bentham's exact geometry: a central tower surrounded by a ring of individual cells. Backlit by outer windows, inmates are entirely illuminated while the central tower remains dark. Prisoners must assume they are being watched constantly, unable to verify the guard's gaze. The philosopher Michel Foucault identified this psychological tension as the basic template for how modern institutions generate social order. By combining rigorous scientific measurement, rigid spatial segregation, and strict daily timetables, modern institutions manufactured a highly predictable human subject. In the past, authority relied on dark dungeons to hide people away. The modern world uses bright light to expose them, separate them, and study them. The psychological cage of constant, inescapable visibility controls behavior far more effectively than a physical dungeon ever could. Michel Foucault spent his career mapping these hidden structures of modern authority. Historically, authority operated as sovereign power, a model where a monarch possesses absolute rule, exercised primarily through the right to seize wealth or execute subjects. Under this old system, punishment was applied directly to the physical body through public spectacles of vengeance. But during the 18th and 19th centuries, societies transitioned away from torturing the flesh, moving toward a gentler system of structured incarceration. The objective of punishment shifted entirely. Institutions began to focus heavily on correcting and normalizing the mind and the soul. Foucault argued that we misread this transition if we think of power as a weapon that a single person or a ruling class holds and wields. Instead, he introduced the concept of power knowledge. Power knowledge dictates that the exercise of authority and the production of scientific truth are unified mechanisms. To govern a subject, an institution must gather detailed data about it. By controlling and observing that subject, the institution generates new data, which refines its own control. This means power is highly, relentlessly productive. It actively produces the categories and classifications we use to define humanity. Through continuous observation, fields like psychiatry and criminology created rigid clinical definitions for the criminal, the mentally ill, and the homosexual. Once a person is categorized, authority can be exercised over them scientifically through treatment and rehabilitation, rather than through arbitrary physical violence. This scientific framework provides the administrative justification for modern, pervasive subjugation. We see this mechanism physically built into modern architecture, which enforces strict spatial homogenization. The public school, the modern hospital, the factory, and the prison all rely on the exact same logic of segregating individuals into rows, desks, and wards. The ultimate output of this disciplinary architecture is the docile body. A docile body is a human form conditioned to be highly compliant and economically useful. To create this compliance, a person's movements are segmented into precise tasks, timed down to the second, and constantly optimized for maximum efficiency. This visualization shows the statistical result of biopower, the shift in political strategy toward regulating human life at the macroscopic population level. To achieve this, institutions use hierarchical observation to monitor massive groups of people simultaneously. Once observed, individuals are subjected to normalizing judgment. Institutions measure everyone against a statistical average and apply micro-penalties to any deviation from that norm. These two techniques are fused together in the examination. The examination is a ritualized test extracting truth from the subject while enforcing the institution's standards. Through the examination, a living human being is physically transformed into an administrative case, allowing their entire life trajectory to be quantified and mapped onto a permanent field of documentation. Your medical charts, your absentee records from school, and your annual performance reviews all serve this exact documentary function. By reducing human beings to trackable data points, modern society efficiently guarantees economic productivity and survival, while stripping away the traits of untamed individuality. Because observational power is now ubiquitous and driven by constant data collection, the application of external physical force is largely obsolete. Foucault proved this through his analysis of modern sexuality, directly countering the repressive hypothesis. The repressive hypothesis is the popular belief that modern society strictly silences and prohibits our sexual desires. Foucault argued that institutions compel us to confess our innermost truths to specialists like doctors, therapists, and scientists, generating a massive volume of data on human desire. This constant demand for confession creates the internalized gaze. The internalized gaze occurs when an individual, aware they are permanently situated in a field of documentation, unconsciously adopts the perspective of the institution observing them. As a result, the individual preemptively judges, monitors, and corrects their own behavior to ensure they align with the statistical norm. The subject believes they are acting out of free will or pursuing personal self-improvement. This belief perfectly masks the underlying disciplinary mechanism. The guard in the central tower is no longer necessary, because the subject now carries the tower inside their own mind. The ultimate terrifying efficiency of the Panopticon is that the modern subject has effectively become their own permanent warden. The modern cage no longer needs iron bars. It exists deeply within our psychology, our societal norms, and our administrative rationality. We feel free because the boundaries governing our conduct are invisible. But Foucault left us with one crucial caveat. Wherever there is power, there is inherently resistance. Because power is a fluid relational network and not a solid object held by a dictator, it is inherently unstable and can be short-circuited. We cannot escape by trying to discover our authentic natural self. The very concept of a deep, hidden authenticity was constructed by the power-knowledge apparatus to keep us confessing. True resistance requires recognizing the invisible blueprints that govern our conduct and actively questioning the reasons for being governed in that specific way. It requires recognizing that we are the products of an architecture, and anything that has been built can be dismantled.